So, what is the secret to happiness? I know that's a loaded question. If we had an answer to that $1 million, billion question, man, how many things would we avoid? All the different methods, healthy and unhealthy, that we use to try to find some joy, to find ways to relieve pain. So I understand it's not a simple question. It's a simple question, but the answer is not a simple one. And yet it's important to ask. Because let's dissect it a bit. People often say, or at least argue, if I had a good life like that person did, I'd also be happy and joyous. The grass is always greener on the other side. But is that true? In other words, is joy and happiness simply a result of circumstances? Or is something about the person? Because the fact is, there are people who suffered greatly, and no one should ever know. And I'm fundamentally happy, joyous people. And there are people who suffer very little. And may they be blessed that way. And they're despondent and depressed and always complaining. As a matter of fact, many people who are blessings take it for granted, and they don't appreciate. So it's clearly not just a circumstantial thing. One of the great mystics said, people say, if good things happen in my life, I'd be happy. He said, no, if you were happy, good things would happen in your life. We project, we generate. It's like a mirror image. That farm boy who never saw a mirror in his life. And then one day he comes to the big city with his family, they come visit. The first thing, they walk into a big mansion, there are big mirrors right in the front hall. So the little boy's looking in the mirror, and he sees another boy making funny faces at him. And then making a sour face. And he gets upset. And he says, why is this little boy making ugly faces at me? Why does he show me such a bad face? And the host comes over and says to him, if you smile to him, he'll smile back. A mirror image. So it's not always about events in our lives. It's actually never about events. It's how we navigate them. So then the big question. So what is the formula? What is it that we have to do to be able to find inner peace, inner happiness, joy? And can we generate it? Or is it just some are lucky and are wired that way and some are not? So let me share with you two passages, two statements from our timeless sages. One is at the end of the book of Genesis. I say the chapter of Genesis. So we know the story. Human being is created, put into the Garden of Eden, paradise, beautiful. But then man sins and is expelled, displaced from this beautiful environment, thrust into a difficult world. And things only decelerate from there. Human beings become corrupt. And at the end of the chapter, the interesting statement, God looks at the world and is saddened, it says. He looks at his handiwork. Here's what I created. Look what they've done. They're self-destructing. They're hurting each other. They're not fulfilling the calling, the mission for which I put them on this earth. Sounds familiar? And then God says, I regret that I created them. And we know what follows. What follows is the great flood that cleanses the earth. God does save Noah and his family, and they rebuild the world afterwards. But let's talk about this verse called regret. So the great commentator, Rashi, citing the Medrash, citing the oral interpretations from the sages, tells the following episode, that a heathen, a skeptic, you can say, a cynic, turns to one of the scholars, one of the sages, and says to him, can your God see the future? So he said, sure. He created the world. So what does that mean that he regretted its creation? Didn't he know that man would sin? And the rabbi wisely responds, he says, did you ever have a child? He says, yes. What happened when you had your child? He says, I celebrated. I rejoiced. And I also made others rejoice with me. He said, but did you not know that one day your child will die? And the skeptic responds, while I celebrate, I celebrate. And when I mourn, I mourn. Two separate things. So he says, God, the same with God. He celebrates the creation of his creations, his creatures. And then he's saddened when they behave in an inappropriate way. However, he does not regret the creation of existence. He regrets and is saddened by the negative, but he remembers the righteous, Noah, who he saves, and his family. Just like you remembered the love of your child. Even when you may mourn, God forbid his death. Again, no one should ever know anything like that. That's one story. There's another one in the Zohar, volume 3. It's an exchange between Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, the author of the Zohar, and his son Rabbi Elazar. And Rab Shimon, the Zohar tells us, is revealing to him the secrets, the mystical secrets of the destruction of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. The deeper secrets behind it all. And Rabbi Elazar begins to cry. And then he says, I'm crying on one side of my heart for the sadness of the destruction, but I'm celebrating on the other side of my heart for the revelation of these deep secrets that my father is teaching me. These two statements carry the secret to life, the secret of the art of holding pain and joy at once. It's not that one cancels out the other. It's not that one takes over while the other is gone. Like when you're celebrating, so there's no pain at that moment. You can be fully cognizant of both and realize that life is a wheel, a turning wheel, a narrative, a flowing narrative. And there are many chapters. And it's one part of one bigger picture. And indeed, yes, when you celebrate, you celebrate. And when you're saddened, you're saddened. Even when you're celebrating, you may even be aware of the sadness that will come one day. And while you're sad, you remember the joy. But it's two sides of the heart. And the true happy, joyous person is not someone that is in denial and ignoring any of the other, but it's someone that understands that whole bigger picture. You see, we live in a life very often driven by the moment. The moment is a good moment, we're happy. It's a sad moment, we're sad. We don't think about the bigger picture. You ever fly in an airplane, you look down, you suddenly see the bird's eye view. You realize the world is a lot different than what you see when you're on the ground. On the ground, you only see your few inches, your feet, a few yards, or maybe a mile or two. But from the sky, you can see a bigger picture. And the same thing with time. I've always given the analogy, we talk about the river of time. So think of yourself on a boat on a river. And the boat is slowly drifting along with what you see now being the present, what you saw yesterday at the banks of the river is the past, and what will come tomorrow is the future. Okay, that's time, past, present, future. You can be in all three places at once. But then there's a bird. And that bird is flying up high, and it sees what you saw yesterday, it sees what you see today, and it sees what you'll see tomorrow. A bird's eye view. Then the bird comes flying down and on your shoulder on the boat. And now the bird is looking at it from your eyes. But the bird knows the bigger picture. The bird is your soul, and you, the person on the boat, is your body. And the river is the river of time. And you can say space as well. So it depends which eyes you look. If you look through the eyes of the present, you see what you see. What is there before your eyes. But if you look through the eyes of the bird, you can see a bigger picture. And in the bigger picture, there are many different aspects to it. But especially in our day and age, where instant gratification has become, I don't want to say an art, but has become a given. You press a button, you can have a delivery from Amazon at your door in 15 minutes, or half hour, whatever it is. The instantaneous results that we get from technology, wherever you are, anywhere, anytime, any piece of knowledge. So it creates the illusion that life is just pressing a button. And if you don't get what you want, you're upset. But if you think about it, all the real things in life don't work that way at all. All the real things in life take truth, the soul, love, transcendence. Those all require a process, and they emerge. You can't pull a flower out of the ground. You can't say, I plant a seed, put a little water, and then I can pull the flower out of the ground. It's going to take time. You conceive of a child, it takes 9 months for the child to develop, the fetus, into a healthy newborn. It's called a process, and it's called emergence. And you need to respect that and be patient. You do what you have to do to make sure that the ground is fertile, it's cultivated, it's nurtured. But the results don't come by simply pressing a button. So it's a different way of looking at life. And you'll look at anyone that has found true joy, true happiness, you'll see they understand the process, they respect the process, and they understand the emergence of things. Things emerge. You don't grab it. You can't own it. And another point is that happiness is a result of doing the right things. It's not like I'm going to now find happiness. It's a big mistake, but people do it all the time. I'm going to buy a book. That book is going to teach me the 10 secrets to finding happiness. Or I'm going to go on a retreat, or on a cruise, or travel, or do this act that gives me pleasure. Or smoke this, or take that. I mean, there are plenty, all the advertisers are selling you essentially pleasure and the avoidance of pain, and all by buying a product or an experience. The secret lies not in purchasing anything, it lies right within you. But it's buried within. It's a different way of looking, the bird within you, to see that bigger picture. Furthermore, in the story with Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, if you think about it, it's even deeper. He's crying for the destruction, but he realizes that within the destruction lies tremendous secrets, that the destruction can bring something far greater. So it's not just that you understand that life is a journey and a cycle of ups and downs, of painful, sad experiences and joyous experiences. You learn that actually, when you think of it, all of it is part of one bigger joyous experience. And the same with the first story, first anecdote. Obviously, it's sad when that child dies. But it doesn't take away from the fact that you had a child, because the only reason you cry for the child is because you love the child. And when you think about it, ultimately, that love doesn't die, and the love and the joy of that doesn't die. It's sad that it ends through death. But death is also not the end. Death brings rebirth, resurrection. That ultimately a body and soul can be reunited. That deserves another discussion, but it's important to understand as I said, the bigger picture. So if you think about it, it's really getting yourself out of the way. Yourself, your ego, your need and demand for control, for ownership. It's humility that allows you, yes, to cry on one side of the heart and rejoice in the other. Realizing that life is not black and white. It's an ebb and flow. Think of the moon. When you look at the moon and you see it waning, you think it's dying. And it finally dies out, there's nothing left. Only to be reborn again. And then you see it start waxing and growing. Obviously from our perspective, because the moon is always full, if you're in outer space. But the moon's lesson is a tremendous lesson in life. The cycles of life. And respecting them. And riding those waves. Now that doesn't take away from the pain. It's not like someone who understands that there's joy ahead, or there was joy before, and there's joy in the bigger picture, in any way minimizes the moment of pain. We do cry. There is a sadness. There is a regret. There's disappointment. But the story doesn't end there. That's why it doesn't devastate. The journey continues. And you'll see that again as a hallmark of all those that have gone through difficult times. The understanding that you must continue to travel. The last thing you want is to get paralyzed and trapped. It's like stopping the boat in that saddest moment because I'm not motivated. I'm lethargic. I feel dead. That's the last thing you want. Movement is the key. You need to keep moving. So in whatever situation it is, you have to keep forging ahead. Jewish ceremony, wedding ceremony, is the custom at the end of the ceremony to break a glass. And many people wonder why. Why break a glass at the height of a new couple's union? And it's often mentioned that this is connected to remembering the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. The destruction of Jerusalem. Like the story with the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. But why then? You can always do that after the wedding, a week later, another time. Why at the height? I mean, that's usually the highest point of any marriage, is the moment of the ceremony, the moment they got married. There will always be conflicts, but the conflicts don't begin usually right under the wedding canopy. So why remind us of the sadness? But it's the understanding of the bigger picture. And it's a beautiful lesson when you think of it this way. That even at the height of your personal joy, and your family's joy, and you found your soulmate, and you're ready to rejoice and celebrate in infinite ways, you keep humble and you remember that the world is still a broken world. And there's still broken hearts out there. And there are those that have not found their soulmate yet. And there are people crying. So even while you're laughing and while you're rejoicing, you remember that there's a tear on the other side of the heart. So besides the compassion and the empathy that carries, it's also an act of humility that you understand the bigger picture. So then the day will come when you may have a setback. It also won't be 100%, because you'll remember there's also the other side of the heart that rejoices. So even in your saddest moment, you realize there's the other side. So those that remember the broken-hearted, when they are filled with joy, then when they're broken-hearted, they are remembered. And you remember, and that person itself remembers the joyous times. So you see a picture unfolds. It's a way of looking at life, never taking for granted your blessings, and also never being overwhelmed by your challenges, and knowing that they all have to be navigated, all part of one bigger picture. That is an art. That is an art, but we human beings have the capacity to contain paradoxes, to balance them. Everything in life is about the balance of opposites, of a contraction and expansion of the heart, of an exhale and inhale of the breath, and in general, of navigating the vicissitudes of the ups and downs and the twists and turns that life presents us. And one does not contradict the other. On the contrary, they complement each other. Just like the white space and the black ink on a page complement each other. When we look at the world today, there's a lot of uncertainty, confusion, disruption. And you can see it as a force that just can demoralize us, can be disconcerting, and shake us up. Or you can see it as part of the movement of a world entering into a new paradigm. A rebirth. Births will always come with birth pangs. They will always come with change, and change is always uncomfortable. So it's a formula that helps us deal with every given situation, personal, global, social, familial, family-related, and literally everything in life. It's a way of looking at the world through the eyes of the soul and seeing the multi-dimensions, the colors of the rainbow on all levels, and learning how to find the harmony. Yes, the harmony between the tears and the joy, between the pain and the sadness and the happiness. May we only be blessed with beautiful things in our lives, but even when sometimes it may seem concealed, know that within it lies tremendous power, tremendous happy power, energy. And it's up to us to tap into it and release those reservoirs of joy waiting to be unleashed. Thank you so much. This has been Simon Jacobson, MeaningfulLife.com. If you've enjoyed this, please subscribe to our offerings, to our YouTube channel. Love to hear your feedback, your thoughts, your comments, and please share. Please share. Thank you, and be well.
This program is brought to you by the Meaningful Life Center. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at meaningfullife.com/donate.